to do it.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Delmore?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the last comment I'll make on it, because I think the Supervisor Colfax has spent a lot of time on something simple, but I think that by eliminating 6 and 7 that's a show of a lack of support for the timber industry or perpetuation of subdivisions is, quite frankly, a big stretch. What my position is, and I would support a motion without 6 and 7. I'd even swallow hard and take the goggles funding and accept that, because $10,000 returning to a fund that only generates 15 in a year, that's 75% of your revenues right there the next year. That's my concern. It's not that there aren't some studies that have some value, but when you have limited funds and those funds are dwindling very rapidly, I'd rather see those funds be put towards some real good projects that have immediate benefit. And like I said, I would support a motion without 6 and 7, as distasteful as funding the state of California is. That's all. That's the end. Thank you.
Thank you. So what's before us is Supervisor Pinchot.
The recommended on 6 and 7 is only $5,000 total. You know, they're not my druthers, but I'm not going to make this a contentious issue or the Board of Supervisors. And I don't know. I'm leaning to change my mind here and go with the recommendation.
Okay. What is before us is a motion and a second to approve, as recommended, the list of grant applications. Any further discussion? Okay, let's go to a light vote, and place your votes now.
Motion carries with Supervisors Delbar and Wattenberger dissenting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. A couple other items. One, I can say I'm very happy to say the quality of the appointments to the Fish and Game Commission continues to be high, and we have, to the extent we've been able to respond to supervisors' concerns about the county blacktail population, and there will be the Fish and Game Commission is sponsoring the first annual blacktail banquet in Willits on April 19th. And Mr. Wattenberger is involved in this, and I'm sure Mr. Pinches is highly supportive from his appointment. So I think this is going to start the ball rolling in a significant effort, particularly in the inland areas, to improve deer populations. And our commission is very committed to being receptive to funding projects. They just don't come forward, and that's the problem we have. So.
Supervisor.
Maybe your commission could do just a little better job advertising. It's a twofold. First of all, maybe you're going to get some innovative proposals out there that are not studies. And the second point is maybe it's going to show how active the Fish and Game Commission is starting to be.
Okay, well,
so maybe you could do a little. I don't know what your budget for doing that is.
We will dutifully send notices out to each newspaper. We've even done radio spots, and I'll try to redouble those efforts and make sure the secretary follows up whether they publish them or not. Do a secondary follow-up.
There's a twofold benefit there. One is getting the idea out there, and the other is to show the folks what the Fish and Game Commission is doing.
Okay, briefly on several other topics. As you're aware, we're facing a crisis in the salmon fishery based on last year's very low returns of Chinook and the projection based on the jack count, the immature fish that come in. Our fishery is driven by the Sacramento River hatchery fish. We're sort of at a point where all our eggs in one basket. Historically, the state spring run salmon were by far the most numerous. Now, and there was also a significant winter run component. Our whole fishery is based on primarily the fall run hatchery Sacramento River fish, and I'm sure you've read the articles. Even if there was much of a season allowed, I don't think there's many fish out there. The wild Chinook populations are in some significant problems. So again, by putting all the eggs in one basket, depending on the fall run hatchery fish, it's a real bottleneck, and we're up against it because of probably a combination of factors. Many people say it's ocean conditions, but the plus side of this that always happens is that when there are these significant shutdowns, the Department of Fish and Game and NOAA Fisheries, they will be under pressure to come up with identifying bottlenecks, putting funding into, for example, expanding the net pens that acclimate the fish in the estuary to prevent the predation. I think you'll see that expand, and but it's going to be a tough few years for the commercial fisheries off our coast, and we should sympathize with those folks. They bring a lot of tourist money into the coastal towns, Point Arena and Fort Bragg. Another issue is the Marine Life Protection Act. This is an act that was sort of, it's been forced down upon us. It's setting up closed zones with various designations. I will not attempt to go through a description of this process. It was described to us as a bottoms-up process. I can tell you it was not a bottoms-up process. And the proposal ends at Alder Creek in southern Mendocino County now. And I have participated on behalf of the commission extensively in this, and it has been the most difficult process to meaningfully create change in from the bottoms up of any process I've ever been involved in. This is going to be decided fairly soon. When we see the final recommendations, it will go before the State Fish and Game Commission. I can say the fishermen of Point Arena went to great lengths to craft a very specific proposals with the proper maps and some tried to make for some allowances to keep their fishery viable, and it really wasn't received very well at all. It was pretty much discarded, so that told me right away that it was not a bottoms-up process. So there may be an opportunity for the supervisors at whole to provide a letter of support for some alternate position before the final State Fish and Game Commission decision, but this thing is really powerful politically, and I don't suspect we will have much effect, but it might be worth a letter from the supervisors. And on the fisheries runs, I can tell you this year that despite all the doom and gloom about salmon, the steelhead run in the county's rivers has been relatively healthy. It's been above what it's been in the past years, and we're not out of the woods yet. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work that has been done in restoration throughout the both private holdings and timber holdings, and even on the forest. So I think that I think we're seeing we have a healthy base of steelhead for recovery if restoration efforts continue. Any other questions, comments?
Supervisor Pinches, I
Just a
believe.
comment. Last week I read in the paper where to me it's the brightest thing that's happened in the fisheries in a long while. They're starting to come up with GPS tracking devices where they can actually, and I think when they find out a lot of these salmon are ended up in these foreign nets, they're going to realize that they have a problem out there, and maybe we'll go back to enforcing our either 2 or 12 or 200-mile limits, and that's going to help our fisheries. But you know, in the last 20 years, it's all, well, we need more habitat. We need more habitat. You know, I don't care how big a chicken house you have. If you got your fox killing all your chickens, you're never going to have a house full of chickens. I mean, and I feel that's what's happened with our fisheries. And so that's the first thing that somebody's realizing. Maybe we ought to track our salmon, what's going on in the ocean, being as they live out there 97% of their life, you know, and only come back up to spawn. So finally the light's coming on and realizing that, you know, I think the technology's out there to do that.
Well, anecdotally, I'll tell you they are tracking sturgeon, and they're finding them go from the Sacramento River system to Klamath all the way up to the Fraser River and back, and they had no idea, and that's based on tracking devices at bridges that collect that data. So there's some opportunity there.
And there's been some excellent salmon fishing seasons the last few years up in Alaska. I mean,
It's a complex issue.
Yeah, but it'd be nice to know where they come, and this, you know, with all the technology we've had, they're finally starting to assign it to fish.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your time,
Thank you.
and I look forward to the fulfillment of these projects.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. An item of time constraint, we're going to have to take item 7E out of order. This is approval request to implement the National Association of Counties prescription discount card program for qualified residents of Mendocino County due to the Director of HR not being available this afternoon. So I apologize, Mr. DeShield. Your item will probably be taken up this afternoon. So to the HR department.
Thank you for taking this item now. I appreciate that. This is an informational item brought to the board. It was presented to me by the chairman of the board, Supervisor Wattenberger, and it is in regards to the National Association of Counties. Supervisor Wattenberger is the current NACO rep.